Ladies and gentlemen, please silence your phones and hush your babies. The show is about to start.
I offer my personal welcome to this
Nemo
and Cole Conference
halftime
show.
Welcome, everyone. Hi. This is it. This is the final Nemo & Co. Conference halftime show of the April 2023 General Conference of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for SEO purposes. Welcome. What a session that was. We got potentially the next apostle in waiting, Ahmed Corbett, giving us a little bit of a taster of his activism. But perhaps most bizarrely was Dallin H. Oakes' talk, which did this to the Jesus, Joe, and Russell. 92 for Jesus, 10 for Joe, 44 for Russell. But it wasn't always so. We left the last session with... Where were we? We left the last session with 34 for Jesus, 8 for Joe, and 40 for Russell. In that session, Jesus gained 58 quotes. Joseph Smith gained 2, and Russell M. Nelson gained 4. Where did most of those 58 quotes come from? Dallin H. Oakes' mental talk, where he got up there, said, "We're Christians, let me prove it," and just quoted Jesus 36 times by my count. It's almost like he knew we were doing this and thought, all right, I'll stick it to him. I'll have to wait until the talk is officially published so I can check all the footnotes and make sure that I haven't counted as 2 quotes what is just an extended single quote. But from my knowledge of the scriptures and from my feeling of how he was saying it, I got 36. So, here to help me go through the rest of what was going on is Peter Bleakley from Mormon Civil War. Peter!
Hello! Oh my giddy aunt. What are we going to do with all that?
I don't know.
He does know. He knows Nemo. He's taking revenge. He's taking personal interest on needling you now in reply for you doing the same to him.
I wouldn't blame him. If this is his way of messing with me, I'm impressed.
It's pretty good, isn't it?
SCMC, if you're watching, pass on my congratulations to Dallin. Give him a cookie, because that was chef's kiss level trolling of me and what I'm doing here. So, well done. But he did. He got up, he said, "We believe in Christ, we worship him and follow his teachings in the scriptures. The scriptures record of the words spoken by God or the Lord are almost always Jehovah after Adam and Eve, because that was the only time God the Father really directly spoke to them. Thus, Jesus is basically all of it." And he also said he would include the inspired editions of Joseph Smith, so he wasn't really owning up to Clark. And then he went on to quote 26 Jesus quotes before then saying, "Oh, and here's what he said on the American continent," another 9 Jesus quotes. He then said just the phrase, "We believe in Christ," almost as like a middle finger to those who say we don't talk about Christ enough. Me. And then what ended with a final quote from Jesus and then walked off. You may as well just drop the microphone. It was quite something.
It was brilliant. I honestly, when I came into this session,
this is the
primary thought in my head was they've named dropped Jesus over and over again, but hardly anyone has actually said what Jesus taught. No one's actually got in, and I had all this stuff ready. You know, they're not scriptorians; they don't care. And then he did this. So I'm like, I have to love him for it, because that is so cool. Just like, I mean, it's like those Bibles you get where they have the words Jesus actually says in red. So he's got one of those old Victorian Bibles, and he's just read all the red bits.
And it's crazy.
On and on.
It just kept going. It was like
I've seen the audience. Yeah,
it was like he'd just gone, you know what? I can't be bothered to write a talk this time, so I'm just going to do this. It's unlike any conference talk I've ever heard before. It was wild. 92 mentions, 58 of which were in one session, 36 of which came from one talk. You know, because Bassett threw a load out there. We'll come to him. He was very Jesus heavy. Razban got a good 5 in. Like, this session was the Palm Sunday session, right? Everyone was going on about Palm Sunday, Palm Sunday, Palm Sunday. And we'll get to it in a little bit, Peter, why there's one part of Palm Sunday they haven't been talking about until right up to the end.
Yeah.
But for the church's SEO purposes as well, anytime someone's Googling any of those scriptures now, they're likely to get Dan Lake Jokes' talk somewhere. So it was just, it's blown my brain a little bit.
It was cool. But then it's like reading the dictionary. So it was cool that he did it. I thought it was an amazing mic drop stunt and powerful. And in a way, I was kind of lamenting the loss that there's so much meat there in the quotes he gave. But
it's like he did what we wanted,
hear it being talked about,
but then didn't expand upon it. You know, he gave us what we wanted
kind
by
of integrated into everything. Yeah.
He just quoted Jesus at us. We could have read that in our scriptures. He didn't add anything as from his position as a prophet, seer, and revelator. He didn't then add any of his insights or any of what Christ had been telling him that he should add to his words, you know, like that.
Which then, but that's him. He's robotic. It's like robot scriptures. You know,
it's almost like he was citing precedent in a case.
Yeah. Well, no, absolutely. I mean, it was just evidence to him of to prove a point. Not that he has an emotional connection with any of it. There's no soul there. It's just, I mean, he hasn't got one anyway. But it's just that there was no sense of him sort of emotionally connecting with what was being said. So it had the potential to be amazing, but I think the more you kind of reflect on it, as you said, it was just a bit weird. But anyway, it's a conversation starter, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to get talked about.
It's in, I think overall this has been a really sort of scriptural literalist fundamentalist conference, which isn't a surprise because we know this is what the headspace these people are in. Everything's literal. Book of Mormon absolutely happened as described. It's all history. He said God was talking to Adam and Eve before the fall, and you have to kind of keep reminding yourself Adam and Eve did not exist. We evolved from some hominids, and so that's all symbolic. And you just get, in the Mormon bubble, you get so used to just repeating these things as cold, hard facts of real people in a real garden and so on. Sometimes you just have to sort of make that point that all their whole cohorts of more nuanced apologists who are not fundamentalists, the ones who lean the other way, none of them believe this. None of them, think Adam and Eve were literally people in a specific garden in Missouri. So I just threw that in there just to kind of remind everyone that we're dealing with a religion here that is so scripturally literalist about mythological stuff. And they will never be capable of, or these guys will never be capable of having any conversation that goes near towards making any of this sort of rationally credible, by addressing that. I mean, that's a little side thing, but it's just, again, if they're wanting to change the world and convert everyone, they're going to have to raise their game to be a bit more credible.
Because as an advert for conference, a talk where you stand and just quote scripture verbatim isn't the best advert for conference. Should we go on to Ballard, though, who, although he looked alive and well, this talk had some somber undertones.
It did. Just to finish on notes, though, sorry, because that's what I do in it. Just things that stuck out for me is he chose scriptures that included beware false prophets, their ravening wolves. You will know them by their fruits. An evil tree brings forth evil fruit. And I was just thinking, have you noticed that this is you? Have you noticed that the membership of the church is crashing on your watch? The fruit is a disaster. The convert baptisms you've hidden away and published online today are half what they were a few years ago. That the major half the growth of the church now is babies, and that number's falling rapidly. It's all going tits up, and you're sitting there quoting Jesus, talking about you can judge us by our fruits, by the results. Well, the result is carnage and failure. So I just thought that was interesting that he's reading these words, but there's no
But they're not
indication that
sinking
he
into
actually
him.
understands what any
Yeah.
of them mean. He just doesn't
Yeah.
get it. Yeah. Sorry,
So
back to Ballard.
let's go on to Ballard, who kind
Yeah.
of gave a very Ballard-esque talk. In fact, he gave a talk that he'd given at the
Yeah.
British Rescue. He gave part of this
Yeah.
talk to us already. But this was very
He's a two-trick pony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
either missionary work or...
Or I'm the love doctor, get married.
Or is the love
Be
doctor
the love
get married?
doctor, you know.
Yeah.
So he talked about his romance, his 4.5 years since his wife Barbara died. Kudos to him for not just picking up a polygamous wife like his colleagues have. It was really cute. And he was talking about what matters most in life as he reaches death, obviously, is your relationship with the Father and the Son, family relationships, and following the promptings of the Spirit. And just what struck me with everyone who talked today was they went on and on about the essential family relationship we have with the Father and the Son. No mention of Heavenly Mother anywhere. You know, they all got told off by Renland last time. So they didn't even use the phrase Heavenly Parents this time, I think. So Heavenly Parents had been starting to come in as a phrase, but they've absolutely purged the female deity right out of it all. And it was just male, 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 father, son, father, son.
And could we go on to those family relationships? Because he talks about, relationship with God and Jesus is most important. Second, family relationships. But he said family relationships are essential for emotional and physical health. But what about abusive family members or families in which, there are abusive individuals? What about that? Because then all of a sudden, it just struck me as a slightly outdated view on family. He was speaking very much of a man of his generation at time, a man in his 90s.
Yeah.
He was like, well, can't we all just get along? You may disagree, but everyone should just get along. Not necessarily taking into account that the old adage of stay together with your abusive spouse no matter what is long gone, and people are far more willing to leave people in pursuit of their own health. People are saying in the comments we need to give out the PBK award, and we absolutely do, but it was slim pickings because Jesus just got so much airtime. The winner by numbers was Razband, because he mentioned him twice, which, compared to some of the other sessions, I mean, the person that mentioned him the most throughout the conference, the entire conference, was Camille Johnson, so the sister that spoke, the Relief Society president. She mentioned him she quoted him 5 times. So she wins the overall award.
Well, I said in the prediction show that it would be a sure sign that Nelson's close to death if Anderson and Cook start switching their allegiance and tone down the Russell praise and start praising Oakes or something. I don't know.
Yeah, well, there you go.
That. But
So there you go.
Anderson's clearly slacking. But we were talking about sort of a reverse PBK because Nelson actually was gushing about his counsellors. So he did some, for once, he did some butt kissing back at
Oakes and for
and
those that don't know,
Iron at some
PBK
point.
stands for Prophet Butt Kisser. It's the person that's kissing up to Russell M. Nelson the most. It's a phrase coined by the wonderful Doug Vincent, who is a guest of the show and long-time friend of the channel. So he then goes on to tell
a lovely quote from Ballard.
Yes, please. Yep.
So I thought this was, I love this. He said, "We don't fall in and out of love as if we are pieces on a chessboard. We choose to love each other every day." I thought that was adorable. I thought that was actual wisdom right there about relationships. Not like I'm no longer in love with you. It just doesn't, feeling out of control of the forces of nature. He was just talking about how each day we have to continue to choose to love our families, even when it's difficult. Obviously not put up with abuse, but I just thought that was lovely that, giving credit where it's due for a good thought.
Should we talk about the widow story real quick? So he talked about the elderly widow
go on.
that he had an impression to meet with when he was a bishop. And like I said, he told this story before, and he said, I'll go see her in the morning. And when he then went to see her in the morning, he was racked by the spirit all night and went to see her in the morning, and she had passed away, and so he didn't get to see her. That'll become relevant. We'll mention that in a later talk, but it's just It's the same as that story about, I don't know who it is, but a person in church history who was in the wagon. The voice of the Holy Ghost spoke to them once, they ignored it, twice they ignored it, the third time they got out, they moved the wagon, and then lightning hit a tree and the tree fell where the wagon was. You know, I don't know who that is. I can't remember who is in that story, but that's a story that I was told. And there's always that, you know, you don't listen to the Spirit, and then something bad happens, or you listen to it on the third time and you get away with it, sort of thing. But yes, it's yet another dead
it's
person.
so awful. It's so, well, there's that, but it's just so anxiety inducing because there's always 10 random impressions you got during the day. I mean, if I was going to be asked, like, what's the biggest sort of emotional or spiritual difference I've experienced since being excommunicated? It is that weight of constant guilt and anxiety is completely lifted because don't have any callings. I'm not obliged to go and save everyone all the time and to listen to the Spirit prompting me to fulfill these ensign stories where you phone the right person at the right time or they'll kill themselves, or that you went and visited and were an answer to someone's prayer. And I've been living with that pressure since I was a baby. And you kind of just internalize it and normalize it. Now I hear him say that, I'm just like, give the people a break. And I love actually something Brad Wilcox said, where he said he was having a lot of anxiety about getting on a plane.
Things I
And
never
he was
thought
in
I'd
a
hear.
line up to the plane. Yeah, I know, exactly. I've studied hours of his stuff. This is the one good bit.
Right.
And if you want to hear the not good bit, listen to the Mormon Civil War podcast
You
for
should. The
hours.
link's in the description.
Um, but the thing which I loved him for, and people do love him for, this is his shtick. Once every 2 years, he says something that's actually really helpful and Christian. The rest of the time, it's just a disaster zone. But one of the good things he said was, and he was talking to young audience. He's saying, I was having this anxiety. Is it the Spirit telling me I shouldn't get on the plane? What is all this about? And then he was like, if God really didn't want me to get on a plane, he'd be a lot clearer than a bit of anxiety while I'm standing in the queue, sort of thing. And I loved that he said that. And he was like, just get on with it, get on with life and stop being over anxious. But this is not helpful. This is Ballard saying, I still regret now, as I am coming to the end of my life, that I didn't stay up far too late after an exhausting week when my family needed me and immediately go and visit this lady because she died in the night. Well, there's always going to be loads of scenarios like that. You could spend every waking moment running around, following all your promptings to go and help people, and they'd love it and they'd feel loved, but you would kill yourself. You'd be burnt out in no time. And that's what has happened to so many members of the church.
So
Living that way with that level of anxiety burns them out, and it's not healthy. Yeah,
not at all. The only other thing I want to say about his talk, and then I want to move on to Razband, is that he said, we hear at fast and testimony meetings, I'm thankful and I love more than I know and I believe. Now, I get what he's trying to say, that actually we need to go up and stop telling stories about our week. I appreciate that. I support that message. That's not what Fast and Testimony meeting is for. It is for going up and sharing your, affirmations of your belief, whatever they may look like. And those are then to be helpful to others in kind of affirming their belief. That's all fine. But there is a difference between I know and I believe, and I'm always an advocate for I believe, because I don't think that it's right for people to be getting up there and saying they know things that are unknowable. I think that's wrong. What are your thoughts on the difference between I know and I believe?
Well, I think this is he's on an old script. What really struck me listening to that, and I wrote it down, was, and Lynn had a comment, was, we were saying having a testimony is not enough. You need to bear it. And then he's kind of testifying that this will transform people. That gives the Spirit the chance to witness to people, and they'll join the church and everything will be fine. And Lynn was listening to this and she said, well, bearing testimony is just shit, though. It doesn't work. And I was like, whoa, okay, love. But such anger there. And it was, it was not that she needs much encouragement for that. She has to live with me. But I thought that was really profound because it's still this magical thinking. It's this idea that all you have to, it's so simple, Mormons. all you have to do is bear testimony at people and they'll join the church in droves. It's so easy. And it's like, well, no, it's not. And it's not enough, because we can bear testimony at them, but then they can go online and do some fact checking. And if they can hunt it down, they will find the entire temple endowment online now, the current one, and which the church has been busy sending its lawyers to stamp out. But it's such a, these naive, simple things are all there is, and they kept telling these conversion stories. Ahmed did as well, based on just bringing it with the testimony and luring people in. If that worked as easily as they say, and the people are doing it, like they're doing it all the time, it's not working, the church would be growing like Topsy. Awards would be stakes like we used to be promised they would be by now. So or this narrative
Okay.
that he's cranking out, and he could be president of the church. He's next in line after Oakes. So what he thinks and how he frames the world is quite significant, because he could well be in charge soon.
Based on his age,
Yeah.
unlikely.
So anyway,
but let's move on to one of the younger apostles,
Yeah.
Razband, who tried to do... He said out loud what a lot of the messaging of this session was, which is, today we join with Christians around the world to honour Christ on Palm Sunday. That's the reason they keep mentioning Palm Sunday, Palm Sunday, Palm Sunday, because, they're trying to push the fact that we're part of mainstream church. He talked about the Holy Week story, but didn't mention the cleansing of the temple. He goes on about an assignment to Ghana. He says the church has got 100,000 Ghanaian members. And then a Ghanaian king was in the conference centre, and he said, "Welcome, Your Majesty," which it sounded a bit weird to have an apostle of the Lord on his home turf speaking on behalf of God, bowing to a king. It was a bit strange.
I know.
We need to...
Very
we'll
British,
come
though.
to
I
it.
approve completely. Obviously.
Absolutely. But
I
we'll
mean,
come to that in a moment. I'll finish the summary. He then goes on to talk about how true discipleship is about unwavering commitment and obedience. He talks about a weird bucket list metaphor, and he gives a strange apostolic blessing. We won't say any more about this, other than blessing someone that they will do something that is already within their power to do is actually not a blessing, it's just an instruction. An apostolic blessing would be blessing them with increased ability to do something, or with increased success to do something, not just blessing them that they will do something that they were already meant to be doing. That's a very strange kind of blessing. So what do you make of the Ghanaian king? Let's start with that.
I mean, that excellent. As British people, we can only approve of kowtowing to monarchs, obviously. So that was cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite a coup to have a king come to their meeting, isn't it? That's good. I mean, we'll obviously beat it with Charles's coronation coming up soon, when all the kings will come here. But they got one. I do have to point out that there are probably several kings in Ghana. African kings tend to be quite regional, but he was the king of Accra, which is the capital of Ghana. So that's a good. Yeah, I mean, the main thing here is we actually started to see Palm Sunday. He had photos of black people parading with palms, and talked about the singing and the joy of it. There was a bit of the white savior complex stuff. I mean, we've all been watching online the Relief Society, is it leaders? I don't know, some of the women leaders visiting Africa, and lots of cliche, what are now not very politically correct sort of imagery of white American ladies hugging black children going on. But and it was very much about, we are they've got to start making an effort with Africa. So it's very clear that this was one of the ways this conference tried to be inclusive of African members, and depicting them and their meetings, and he was sort of reveling in the Tokarati choir. So I think it was a good effort to make that connection with Black African saints in West Africa, who might be the only ones left soon.
We'll talk about the bucket list.
So that was cool. Yeah, so he said, rather than having a bucket list of going to nice far off places, just fill your bucket with the living water of Christ, and that you'll find that more satisfying. And he said, visiting a far off place will never leave your soul feeling satisfied. At which my wife cried out, "Really?" Like, it would absolutely satisfy her soul and mine as well. I have to
I
live with
enjoy
the
traveling.
ongoing disappointment of my wife that I keep going on international school trips and she's not there with me. So I go to New York and she doesn't. I go to, whatever. It's not that often, but get to go to Rome. Been there twice
Hmm.
without my wife. So I'm in deep trouble if we don't have an international holiday at some point this week or this year. Um, so we're going to wait for the ferry crowds to clear at Dover.
Hmm.
That's still a traffic jam at the moment, apparently for Easter. But so it was you're not real. If you actually went to somewhere on your bucket list abroad, you would remember that for the rest of your life. You'd have an amazing experience. It would be life-changing, and if you've been lucky enough to do anything that in the past, it kind
Hmm.
of stays with you. It
Yeah.
definitely leaves your soul feeling satisfied. So again, it's lazy, trite little metaphors and things that just don't actually speak to people's real lives. And it's all right for him. He gets to globetrot all the time. So I'm
Hmm.
sure for him, it's another capital city, another exotic beach. That's his job now. But those of us who don't get to do that unless we save up for years and get lucky, I
Hmm.
mean, that would be an incredible experience to have. So I thought he was speaking from a lot of privilege right there.
Yeah.
But he kind of he tried to give like a multiracial, inclusive vision as his punchline. All the kindreds and tongues of the world will one day stand in white robes with palms in their hands to hail their Redeemer. Like
Mm.
the
Yeah.
righteous of the world. And again, having been sort of exed and distanced from it all a bit, I'm not really excited by that idea.
Right.
Especially when it was so repetitive, this conference. He's our Redeemer. He saved us. We're grateful for the atonement. Yes, 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 yes. Um, but what I sort of love about Mormonism, and they hardly ever talk about, is kind of the bigger picture here. We were always meant to go a step beyond your generic Christianity. We weren't meant to be caught up in these false traditions from the Middle Ages of
Hmm.
Ash Wednesday and covering yourself with ashes and all this stuff. And it looks like they're starting to try to engage with the Christian liturgy to kind of fill in, which Jana Reese will love because she's another people like her have done these wonderful sort of deep dives into trying out Christian
Hmm.
practices and working with their calendar and found it quite spiritually fulfilling, which it can be. It's really not Mormon, is it? It does feel very tacked on. And
Mm.
suddenly we're all Palm Sunday,
And
Palm Sunday.
you know
And
what
someone
else?
commented, well, like, can you imagine loads of white Mormons walking around the streets waving palms? And it's like, I
Mm.
could actually, they'd make a go of it, but we're not good at having fun with our religious events.
No,
We
no,
we
we're
don't
not.
know how. We
It's
wave
because
hankies like
we
it's the
come
most
from drab
uncomfortable thing
and
ever.
dour 19th century Protestantism. That's where we come from. We don't come from the pomp and
Yeah,
ceremony of
yeah,
European Christian tradition.
no,
And the other,
yeah.
you mentioned things being tacked on, and I've run out of cool and
Mm.
charming segues as to how I'm going to bring up candles. So I'm just going to shamedly bring up candles. Go buy candles.
Candles
They're
are
in the description.
essential to Catholic
Candles.
worship. Yeah,
Yeah, candles are great. They make everything smell
absolutely.
good.
Mm.
I'm working on a candle with the EXMO Candle Company, which is exciting.
I'm
It's going to
excited
smell
for that.
like me.
I am.
So
I want
I'm
it to smell like you,
yeah,
Nemo.
I'm going for the
It
Gwyneth
must
Paltrow
smell like
vibe.
you,
So
like a small puppy,
yeah,
like
Peter,
that
as a man
warm,
that has,
soft puppy smell.
he's a man that has hugged me,
I've
so he
I've
can attest.
I've I've been where you are. I've stood in that studio, people, and I've sniffed the candles, and I love them. And
There we go.
I'm getting paid
Um,
nothing. No one sent me a
in
candle,
fact,
but I can vouch for the
they
Exmo
do a
candles.
the EXMO Candle Company do a Court of Love candle, and there's a really fun clip
Yeah,
of Peter smelling it, and he's like, "Yeah, this is what excommunication smells like. You're right, it is. It's great." So if you want apostate approved candles, go check them out. They're in the description. The other thing you can do now there is you could become a monthly donor if you're liking this. You could you could subscribe, you could do those free things that also help me. Whatever you like to do. But thank you for being here, and thank you to all those that have joined us throughout 10-hour torture fest that is General Conference. It has been more fun having you all along for the ride, so thank you very much. Anyway, I'm done gushing. Back to being my stoic British self. Let us talk about Vern P. Stanfill.
But before that, because that's what I do, the comments are saying that we should have a rusty candle that's like an old man fart smell in a crushed bottle. That's perfect.
A crushed, just he gets a little bottle like this.
The candle to commemorate this conference. That would be perfect.
It would be excellent.
Vern.
Yeah, Vern.
Is there anyone in Britain? Oh, sorry, I was going to say, is anyone in Britain called Vern?
I don't think so.
I guess is it Vernon who in Harry Potter though? Got to remember our culture.
Oh, Vernon, of course.
Uncle Vernon.
Yes,
Vernon.
Vernon Dursley.
Anyway,
so maybe he's a Vern.
Stanfill.
Yeah, I really liked his talk. Oh, we just lost Peter Bleakley for a second. I really liked his talk because I felt like he went very Christian on it. It was very much a talk of Jesus of the gap. So we do our best, and Jesus will fill up the rest. And he quoted Uchtdorf, which I think was possibly one of the first Uchtdorf quotes of the conference, which was bold and excellent. It was a nice talk. Jesus will take your best, make the best of it. And he gave some great advice. Genuinely one of the best pieces of advice that was given this conference, which is comparing yourself to others is not productive. Seeing others that set an example of where you would like to be and set an example of good behaviors can be productive, so that's excellent. So we could look at emulating those who demonstrate Christ-like attributes. He said that could be uplifting. However, the problem is there was a slight implication there that those individuals were the senior brethren of the church, and certainly from my experience and from the way they've acted over the past few years, I'd say they're not necessarily the best examples of Christ-like behavior, particularly in the facets of honesty. So Peter Bleakley's back. My partner in crime has arrived. I have no idea. Sorry, but it's all right. I riffed. I gave them the overview of Vern P. Stanfill. So if you've got any specific points you want to make, it was beautiful. It was like, you know, when you've had a child and then they sleep through the night for the first time, and you just get that uninterrupted sleep, just like that. So perfect. I love you, Peter. You're excellent. You'd enjoy it. Could you, if you've got any specific points about Vern, please let's hear them before we go on to Mark Bassett.
Oh, I loved him. He was so good. He was just good, proper Christian Mormonism, you know. And he was saying, and I loved how he described the conversation that Jesus might have had with Peter. So Peter is like, oh, I'll walk on the water then. I'm rushing towards you. And then he doubts and falters. And I just thought this was beautiful. What a lovely way to teach it. They imagine Jesus saying to him, you know, you got out of the boat, Peter.
Which, hang on, I thought we were meant to stay in the boat. So...
Well, you know, that's so yesterday.
Okay.
We're back in the boat. And you faltered, but in effect, I see your offering, and you know your clumsy efforts. He said, "Our clumsy efforts can lead to miracles. Perfectionism is not the same as being perfected in Christ. So don't be sort of overwhelmed with anxiety and all of that sort of thing." I love that. What a brilliant message to Mormons.
Speaking to a genuine problem that we have within the church, particularly because we're a church that's based around some elements of prosperity gospel, and we feel the need to compare ourselves to others. Perfectionism is a problem within Mormonism. So I genuinely, I think if I'm giving out an award for best talk, this would get my award for best talk. I think it was really good. But unfortunately, that means there's kind of not that much for us to say about it, really. So should we go on to Mark Bassett?
No, but Christ will perfect our humble offerings, you know.
Yeah, that's a really lovely message.
And we just need to bring what we can, and that's good enough for a perfect harvest. What a great talk. So Mark Bassett is an accountant. He's a car auctioneer, so a man after Mr. Ballard's heart. Assistant director of the missionary department for a while. And he was talking about Lazarus being dead for 4 days. and sort of how we can learn from the story of the Lazarus and how Jesus handled it all and apply it to our lives. So he's talking
Mm.
about how depression, anxiety, hopelessness, financial struggles that we face could all be helped by sort of responding in the way that Jesus did.
Mm-hmm.
And so, first of all, he said, we can sometimes learn from our more difficult challenges. Harder is good, in effect. So, I mean, there's some truth there. Um, and he particularly, so in a sense, Jesus almost intentionally
Mm-hmm.
put Lazarus's family through extra days of grief,
Yeah.
just so they'd sort of learn something from it. Um, and he he said that Jesus made sure that anything that the people could do themselves, they did it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They moved the rock from the thing. They unwrapped the bandages, the burial clothing from Lazarus. He didn't like go in all He-Man and wizardy and make the rock move and all of that. He just did the bit he could do, which was to resurrect the dead. Um, so we do all that we can, and Jesus will do only what he can do. And
Mm-hmm.
that is a very Mormon concept. I
Yeah.
thought that was spot on for how Mormons see the world. It's we are not here to be passive, to be saved by grace, to be sort of God arbitrarily decides to zap us and that happens. And then if we're good after that, it's a result of God in us rather than our own intentional choices.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much, whether you agree with it or not, this is pure Mormonism. The idea that if you can do it yourself, you do it yourself. We are gods in training. We're
And that's
not
why he had the
broken
tagline, "We
things.
can do this."
Yeah.
That was his. That
Yes,
was
we
his
can do this. I
tagline.
love that.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if
Can
that's the
do
name of the
positive
talk.
Mormonism.
Could I make a point
Yeah.
about
Mm,
Lazarus in that story? Jesus waited for a number of days, and
mm,
I couldn't help but think back to Ballard. That, like Ballard, his delay meant that his friend died before he got there. But
yeah.
unlike the story of Ballard,
Yeah.
Jesus was able to resurrect him and bring him back. Now, I'm not saying we should expect Ballard to be able to go and bring her
I
back to
am.
life, but maybe we should.
Of course
What are
he
your
should.
thoughts?
No, he should.
Okay.
Well, the New Testament
Defend
says
that
this.
position.
I will defend it from the very scriptures Dallin Oaks almost quoted. Um, that this the whole point is of the restoration was we're bringing it all back, all of it. I mean, if they're going to bring freaking polygamy and racism and all of that back from the ancient past, they
Mm-hmm.
can bring back raising people from the dead. The point is the same religion, the same apostles, the same power, the same priesthood authority to
Mm-hmm.
perform miracles. Ballard should have gone there, maybe waited 4 days, and then raised that lady from the dead, or at least tried to, because that's what they claim. They overclaim all the time. They want the kudos, the kowtowing, the credibility of being actual, real apostles and prophets,
Mm-hmm.
like in the Bible. But they
Modern
can't
day Moses,
do
right?
any of it. Yes.
Modern day
And
Moses,
that's the
but
point of
parts
the
and water then.
restoration. It's the apostasy of the false Christians that says those things are no longer needed. We've got the gospel now, so there's no longer a need for spiritual witnesses or the gift of tongues or healing
Mm-hmm.
or anything. Um, they should be doing this, not teaching that you can have the faith to be not to be healed. There is no sign anywhere that they are doing the signs, and the New Testament specifically says these signs will follow the true apostles. They will handle snakes and get bitten and not die.
Mm-hmm.
They will heal the sick. The miracles will happen,
Give sight to the
and
blind.
they demand that we kowtow and grovel and defer to them as if they are exactly that special and important and gifted, and they don't do any of it. And this is one of the huge elephants in the room in the Mormon church, that all this ridiculous overclaiming about how special these people are. They don't do it. They can't. They're not even pretending to anymore. They used to give dark hints. I mean, Cook does. Quentin Cook is repeatedly on record and on audio saying he's seen the Saviour's face and heard his voice, like he's met Jesus. And that's in the context he gives that, he's clearly telling people, I've seen Jesus. But Oakes has screwed that up for him already by saying he doesn't think any of them have seen Jesus, and so we know Cookie's lying or being weasel worded. They don't do it. They can't. I mean, where is the example of someone paralyzed being able to walk because a Mormon anyone came and blessed them and they walked? There's a few dodgy possible situations from Joseph Smith's ministry.
We
but
have the
nothing
revival of a
essential.
gnat. Don't forget, we have a small winged insect came to
That's
life.
true.
Yeah.
Yes, it worked. Yes, minor life forms.
There you go.
He had a slogan though: 3 C's: counsels, commandments, covenants.
Nice.
There we go. So we had
right.
yeah. But
should we go to Corbett?
3 C's.
Should we go to Corbett, because Corbett, and those of you that have been watching, will know we've been saying this already, but I think he's well pegged to be the next apostle. From a diversity hire point of view, the Church for Optics wants a black apostle as soon as they can get one, because
which would be a disaster.
They've been pushing diversity. If you watch the clip, there's a clip that comes on before conference of a sort of Pacific Islander looking sister missionary. Talking about welcome to General Conference. Conference is for followers of Christ gather together, and they're showing clips. And the clips they're showing sisters speaking. They're showing the Black 70s speaking. They're showing as much diversity as they can, and then they show Russell M. Nelson, and they're just like. So the church has realized that when people see that the tab choir is essentially all white, and that the leaders of the church are all white, and that the optics aren't good.
Very white today.
So yeah. My prediction was that Ballard's talk, because he mentioned passing over, was a goodbye talk. But at the same time, he seemed like he was in pretty good health. So, but I've got to keep guessing that one of these 90-something-year-olds is going to die, and I'll be right one of these days. So they can only last so long. But I think it was interesting that the changes to the young men's presidency were effective immediately, and that he came straight out into the Quorum of the 70, where he could get picked up as an apostle. Whereas the other side to it was that the young women's presidency, when that got changed, they're going to wait till summer to change, to actually swap over. So I think the urgency and everything else, and the fact that he's now speaking at conference, boom, he's speaking at conference, so they're getting him in front of faces. And he quoted Uchtdorf, Renland, Christofferson, and Nelson. So he's chumming up to his core buddies as well. He's trying to quote as many of them as possible. Say, "Oh, look at me! I'm in the group." But we've got a clip to show of him in a moment, because he gave essentially a sum up of his activism talk, his talk that he did against activism, and he's basically giving some advice to parents. Should we play the clip? Yeah,
sure. Can I just say before that that if they've got any sense at all, they'll go for a different diversity option. They'll go for the Englishman, because they've got.
Doesn't
Alan
feel
Phillips
like as much of a diversity
but
option.
They've only got but there's only 2 British general authorities. That's a complete insult. We've been going this church for donkey's years. They've got more than enough Americans. Until to this weekend, 1 British 70 for this whole country that's been fundamental to the church's history and trying to hold on. So if they got Patrick Kieran is the only one left now who has the first clue what danger they're facing and how to deal with it. Uchtdorf's kind of retired himself from that role. Patrick Kieran saved the church with his barnstorming anti-abuse talk just in time before the Associated Press just went all over the church's cover-up of child abuse. But he gave them their fig leaf. He saved them. He saw it coming. It was exactly on the 20th anniversary of was it L. Tom Perry's awful talk where victims of abuse should work out their responsibility for it?
Oh no, it wasn't Perry. It was
Scott, Richard G. Scott.
Richard G. Scott.
So Patrick is sharp. He's managed, it seems, to keep his radicalism despite being in house now. So if they got any sense, he would be in the apostleship pronto. But they won't. If they choose Ahmed, it'd be a freaking disaster because he is an idiot. He's a race traitor. He has been front and center of their gaslighting the church's racism and saying it's okay and we don't need to apologize and you shouldn't complain
But then that would be
about
exactly
it.
why they would make
I
him
mean,
apostle, because he'll get up there and say, "Oh, don't
yes,
worry, as a
yeah,
black member of the
yeah,
church, I'm not bothered, so you don't
yes.
need to be bothered
There's
either."
no issue here.
Yeah.
And they will continue to fail to ever deal with that issue and have some hope of survival. His appointment would accelerate the destruction of the church because he's intellectually and rationally incredibly, as we're about to hear, an idiot. You know, nothing to
Well,
do with his race. He's just not that bright. He doesn't get
let's
it.
let's hear his
And
idiocy.
anyway, I'm
Um,
very opinionated about
re-
him.
regarding activism and how parents should deal with
Yeah.
their children struggling with the church. This is something else.
Christ empowers
Yeah.
those who are struggling or feel they don't belong in the church because it helps them, as Elder D. Todd Christofferson stated, affirm Jesus Christ died for me and loves me. Parents, if your child struggles with a gospel principle or prophetic teaching, please resist any type of evil speaking or activism toward the church or its leaders. These lesser secular approaches are beneath you and can be lethal to the long-term faithfulness of your child. It speaks so well of you that you would protect or advocate for your precious child or show signs of solidarity with him or her. But my wife Jane and I know from personal experience that teaching your beloved child why we all desperately need Jesus Christ and how to apply his joyful doctrine is what will strengthen and heal him or her. Let us turn them to Jesus, who is their true advocate with the Father. The Apostle John taught, "Whosoever abideth in the doctrine of Christ hath both the Father and the Son." He then warns us to beware, quote, "If there come any unto you, and bring not this doctrine," close quote.
So there's so much in there, but the idea that your children need healing in some way or fixing, right? Fine. Particularly when he talks about advocacy, he's basically telling mama dragons to get in line. This idea that you shouldn't advocate for your children, but let Jesus do the advocating for them. Well, Jesus isn't advocating for them because they claim to represent Jesus and they're not advocating for your child. So who is? Because they're not listening to Jesus if Jesus is advocating for your child, but they claim to represent him. So no one's advocating for your child. So you as a parent better stand up and do it because your child's in danger from that very church by their policies and practices towards certain groups of people. That's just my 2 cents on that.
It's and I've got 25. So I mean,
Please.
it's not it's not a choice between Jesus or the church. You can absolutely teach your child to love Jesus and be close to Jesus while acknowledging that the systems of the church that oppress your LGBTQ children and drive them to suicide are wrong, are not of God, and nothing to do with Jesus. He's again conflating himself with the Almighty God, who he doesn't even begin to understand. So that's a false premise that you have to reject Jesus in order to advocate for your child. It's absolutely, I mean, it's sinister, isn't it? But this is his MO. My next episode is going to simply be an evisceration of his anti-advocate speech to the chaplains, a few months ago, because there's so much in there, and he is absolutely kind of a Desna avatar product of what you get if you believe all the church's propaganda, but you clearly don't have the will, or, I mean, as a lawyer, you don't have the whatever to actually understand the religion properly and to realize how dangerous a lot of these assumptions and cliches are. And all the time he's doubling down on authoritarianism. Don't speak badly, don't annoy these people, don't upset the leaders, don't challenge them, because quiet diplomacy and kowtowing will get you what you want eventually. and it's nonsense. It's not how any reforms have happened in the church for donkey's years.
Yeah.
And
So-
he will reference the civil rights movement and all that. He'll play his race card wherever he can, but he doesn't actually understand how those changes came about or what those leaders did to make them happen. Or he does, but then says it doesn't work in our church, like Dallin
simply
Oaks,
put, he
saying
doesn't
there's no loyal
understand.
opposition. Yeah,
He doesn't understand
Yeah.
that he only has the priesthood because of activism against the church.
yeah.
That is the
Yeah.
only reason
Yeah.
that he is now in the position he's in, and he does not understand that,
Yeah.
or he's
Yeah.
choosing to forget that inconvenient fact.
Yeah.
Can we go on? Can we go on to?
He's a massive brown noser. Yeah.
Let's go on to Susan Bednar's husband.
Oh. Yeah.
So Susan Bednar's husband spoke about Enoch and the city of Zion a lot. He talked about how, you know, when Enoch was called, he was keenly aware of his inadequacies, and haven't we all felt like that? Which was kind of, it's always weird when he doesn't attempt to be relatable, because he never feels relatable. He always kind of feels a little bit like an alien that's landed and isn't quite sure how to relate to mortals, and to humans. So he talks about how abiding, if you're going to come to church, you better permanently remain. He talks about how we must strengthen our individual covenant bond with the Father and Christ. If we abide in him, he will abide in us. Is that possible? Yes, absolutely. We need to plant the seed of the word in our hearts, which is fine. And to be honest, most of his talk was just a bit, you know, boilerplate. But it's this last
random,
point,
wasn't it? Yeah.
it's this last point I really want to dig into with you, which is that some members accept as true the words taught at conference, and yet struggle to believe and apply them to themselves. It was kind of a nice sentiment if you look at it a certain way, but the way he delivered it and the way he almost certainly intended it was that is the fault of the members for not applying these words, and kind of criticizing them for not believing that those words apply to them, kind of like saying, oh, well, I have a different circumstance, so these teachings don't apply. Your thoughts on that particular part of his talk?
Yeah, it's just again, it's blame the members. It's like you believe what, or you say you believe what we keep saying from these pulpits at you is true, but you're still not doing it. You're so frustrating, minion Mormons. And it was a bit like the hasten the work debacle. It was, we have no new ideas whatsoever, but we just want you to actually do the thing. Like, we keep telling you to do 100% home teaching. Why are you still not doing it? What's wrong with you? Hasten that work. And they tried that for a year or two, and it was just completely failed, obviously, because it's not dealing with reality. So I really felt it was more of that. It's like, it's your fault. As with Bednar, with him, it's always everyone else's fault but his own. It can't possibly be that he and his regime are Pharisaical nut jobs. And it was Pharisaical. I mean, he was going on about, you know, you must worthily partake of the sacrament and all of that, and trotting off the list of having to deserve God's attention. And my wife just called out Pharisee checklist. You know, that's what it was. And
he gave a to-do list, didn't he?
Yeah. And he said, he who says he knows him and keeps not his commandments is a liar. Walk even as he walks. I'm just thinking, you utter hypocrites. How dare you, the first presidency, claim to know Jesus, but they're not keeping Jesus's commandments. The SEC just fined them £5 million for epic financial fraud and deception, for committing at least 6 or so crimes and sins that, according to their own handbook, must demand church discipline, which you've been writing to lots of state presidents about. And they're just all standing up there spouting this, you know, patronizing us, and they can't ever see that they're the problem. They're the ones who are not doing the commandments. They're the liars, like literally the liars.
Yeah, hypocrisy
as found
has
by
been
a
rampant.
Government agency. Yeah.
I mean,
but
no one mentioned tithing. No one did a tithing talk.
No one mentioned tithing. Thank you, whoever it was in the comments who pointed that. No, Patrick McCleary.
Are people talking about that in the comments? Are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
He messaged me. I think it was him, and said not a mention of tithing anywhere.
Yeah. No, I'd written that in my notes. There's no mention of tithing.
Yeah.
I was on the lookout.
So there is some shame there. yeah, there is some that clearly indicates some shame because it's normally one of their favorite topics. So that was interesting, definitely.
Yeah, I think even they are not tone deaf enough to decide that they're gonna. It's a good idea to talk about tithing. But what they are tone deaf enough to do is decide to announce a good sort of 15 temples or so. So I'm going to bring PD on, and we're going to look at the temples, which is an indicator because PD's in the back, not looking like he's paying attention. That he's going to just come on stream like that. There we go.
Sorry, guys. Sorry. Sorry.
Right, PD, my friend.
I was fact checking.
Is fact checking me. Oh dear. So we've got all these temples were announced, and they've been plotted by a viewer of the show onto a Google Earth.
They have.
I believe even in a different color to the other ones.
Yes, they're in yellow.
They're in yellow, so we'll be able to tell which ones they are. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a look at the new temples. So to recap, PD, there was one in Guatemala, one in Peru, 2 in Brazil, 2 in the Philippines, 1 in Jakarta, Indonesia, Hamburg, Germany got one, Lethbridge, Alberta, San Jose, California, Bakersfield, California, Springfield, Missouri, Charlotte, North Carolina, Winchester, Virginia, and Harrisburg. I don't know where that is. I didn't write that down.
Harrisburg's in Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. There we go. Pennsylvania. So Amish country.
Yeah, the Dutch.
Yes, Pennsylvania Dutch. Right, okay. Let's add this to the stream.
Okay,
Walk us
so
through it, my man.
whilst you guys have been nattering, I thought I'd take a look at what these new temples actually represented. Okay, so if we look at this Earth, I want to start in California.
Yeah,
let's put it straight. Okay, these 2 new ones in California, we have got Bakersfield down here in the south, and in the north we've got the Modesto temple. And if you go on fullofconsideration.com, and just take a look at the absolute hammering that the west coast of the United States has taken recently.
Wow.
Even just go back to 2018, pre-COVID. Just look at all this red down the western seaboard. And if we go specifically to last year's stats and zoom in, we can see clusters around these
particularly around the one, what is that, San Jose?
So Bakersfield's here, where
Bakersfield's at the top.
This red dot where a unit was closed last year, but as I went back through the years, you can see them going all the way up and down the west coast. And then Modesto's in here, where it's just an absolute cluster. So yeah, that strikes me as Russell trying to plug holes with temples again. And the same with the Hamburg temple.
Yeah, because how many members? Like we've got Elliot Heath in the chat, and I've been saying this basically since it was announced. You've got the Copenhagen temple not too far away. Who's utilizing the Hamburg temple really? Because the members in the west of Germany were already going to The Hague, and they're getting the one in Brussels, and they've got Frankfurt, which is not too far. The Saints in Bavaria will go down to Switzerland. Then you've got the Saints in the east of Germany will go to Freiburg. Maybe you'll get some blokes up near Berlin that'll go along to Hamburg, but you know, it just, I don't really see who it's serving, and the membership up there is not exactly thriving. I've had people reaching out telling me since it was announced.
Yeah, on the 2018 data, we can already see that Northern Europe's starting to die.
Yeah,
or at least this northern part of Germany, and even in Hamburg itself.
Yeah,
2 wards and 1 branch were closed in 2018. But someone just a few moments ago commented on one of the ex-Mormon groups saying that they were a missionary there in the 90s, and that they say they just announced a temple in Hamburg, Germany, where I served my mission. I remember an elder from Holland asking Dallin H. Oakes, what would it take to get a temple in Hamburg? Oakes said there would need to be several more stakes within the stake we were in, the Hamburg stake, and that there would probably need to be another mission added to the ground we covered. This was April 95. There have been more wards dissolved and the mission itself closed and merged with another. I still talk to my friends in the wards in Germany. They have all left the church and tell me of the chapels having 10 people on Sunday mornings. And
great.
Now they get a temple. So it just seems like in the 90s, they had this vision that everything was going to progress, and that's how they'd get the new temples in there. Whereas now there's been a sea change.
I think what that shows us is that pre-Russell M. Nelson and his grudge against Hinckley, there were some criteria that were necessary for a temple to be built, and those have been very clearly thrown out of the window. It's just like it's Oprah Winfrey land. You get a temple, you get a temple, you get a temple. He's just dishing them out like sweets.
But not to be,
It's
I guess,
rewarding.
totally rude about it. To show both sides of the coin. Philippines, massive growth.
Yes, huge.
Area, which is why we can see, if we look at the new Filipino temples announced. I mean, look at the Philippines here. This is just nuts. All these temples.
Like, you've got all those red ones as well, which are announced temples. So the Philippines are getting covered.
Yeah, and now Indonesia as well. Down here, getting one, which looks to be close.
Heavily Muslim country, is it not?
Yeah. So
That's amazing. That's a surprise, isn't it?
Jakarta. Springfield, Missouri.
Where's the nearest one's been announced? Sorry, there's one just above it there.
Singapore,
yeah. So,
which is very, very United States.
Very English speaking. I think English is an official language of Singapore. No.
Yeah.
So,
I guess there's an expat community in Jakarta.
Possibly,
I would assume.
Yeah, but nothing in Africa, as was commented on. Sorry, making everyone seasick there. Nothing in Africa. We've still got all these in West Africa that have been announced, but still only 2 in operation there, and lots announced. Well, a few announced going down towards South Africa, but still nothing built or in operation. And South America is a similar story to the Philippines. On the
booming.
fuller consideration, still lots of green. Oh, look at that in West Africa, man.
Yeah.
You can see the hot spots now for the church. 2 temples announced up here in Brazil on this northern and western coast, which were Teresina and Natal.
Nice.
And then over here in Guatemala.
I'm getting serious like GeoGuessr vibes. I feel like I feel like you're playing GeoGuessr and we're like chatting to you about it. I don't know why.
People get millions of subs from doing that. So
GeoGuessr.
Guys,
you should do GeoGuessr but for Mormon temples. Anyway,
I'm feeling far too organized. So if we can 15 temples, I won.
Insert some chaos. You did. You won. Yeah, that's the amount you predicted. Did I predict 12?
You predicted 12. Peter predicted 19, and Jane predicted 17.
Whoa.
So that's 2 conferences in a row. So I'm going to count that as a roll because I guarantee I won't get the third.
Can we have a look at Lethbridge, Alberta, as a
Yes,
temple,
we can.
and how on earth that works?
Well, so Lethbridge is this yellow one here, and this is actually quite a stronghold. Southern Alberta is massive.
Because it's where they sent all the polygamists.
Mormonism, yeah.
They sent them there in Mexico to do all the polygamy business. So the church is quite strong there.
Yeah. And for an English person, it's really interesting that when you get up into Calgary, one of the main roads is called the Shaganappi Trail. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it there. So every time we visit, my brother lives here, so every time we visit, driving along there is interesting. Feel very conflicted. But in this area, they've got the Raymond down here, massive Mormon community. Lethbridge, massive Mormon community. I think it's Raymond's got the biggest chapel in the world.
Yeah.
It's like 3 chapels together. It's
I know in
massive.
Cardston you can't buy alcohol. I think you have to go out of Cardston to get alcohol and bring it in.
You do, but I remember being in a store and they won't even sell. A big problem in Alberta, unfortunately, is not just the Mormon community. No, that sounded really bad. A big problem is the fact that alcoholism within the Indigenous community is it's a problem, and they get a lot of people coming from the reservation to buy alcohol because they won't sell it on the reservation, and then because there's a lot of Mormons, it's even rarer to be able to buy the alcohol. So then they start buying expensive like mouthwash and different things like that. So then they restrict the mouthwash, and it's two big problems or two big issues around alcohol kind of crossed over there. So it's probably even worse than Utah for not being able to get your hands on alcohol.
Can we have a look at the east coast of the states, where we got these new temples?
Yeah. So we got the Missouri one, Springfield.
Yeah.
And whenever anyone hears Missouri, you're just like, ooh, Missouri. Ooh. But Springfield's actually quite a long way from Jackson County, which is up here by Kansas City.
Yeah.
So the Kansas City one's probably a lot closer than Springfield.
Is that where Bart Simpson lives?
Yeah.
Is that why it's yellow?
There's a couple of Springfields, I think.
There's a few, yeah.
Yeah.
We've got the Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yeah, cool.
And then we've got the Pennsylvania one, which was Harrisburg and Winchester,
and then
Maryland.
Can you just swing the map around to the British Isles for a moment?
If you're going where I think you're going, let's go.
Let's go.
Because
hang on, no, just right to the top of the British Isles, just for our American viewers. So this is where we live, right? Just keep zooming in up at the top. Yeah, there's not one there, is there?
No, there's a lot of green there, isn't there?
A distinct lack of a little yellow dot.
Is Jane in the chat? Where's
Jane in the chat? Is she tamping? Is she raging?
Jane, is it? Oh, yeah. 21st century Jane is right there. She's BD. Yeah. Jane, the link's available.
So if Jane would like to come in and rage, if you pop into the green room, we'll bring you on. But yeah, there's a distinct lack of temple for Scotland, unfortunately. 21st Century Saints simply says F right off. So
all right,
I think
that's a fair reaction to the fact they still haven't got a temple. Okay, right. So thank you for doing that, for doing that roundup. What other predictions were there, and let us know how we did.
Well, if you want to close my screen down.
Oh yeah, let me do that.
And then I'll bring up on my screen here at home. So we predicted. Well, I think the first one on the list was SEC, that they considered the matter closed. And they did consider it closed because they didn't mention anything. And as you said just a moment ago, nothing about tithing.
Nothing about tithing.
So that was interesting. One of the ones that we touched on, and I almost went back and tried to get the clip, was the Gandhi King Mandela Peace Prize to Nelson. And the fact that in the session, the Sunday morning session, in Nelson's talk, he gave them so much material to be able to play in a little trailer before they give it to him. We even spoke about that in the prediction show, that when will they mention it, and will it be a case of give us something to be able to play? So I think that was a hit that we got today, and we're going all Joseph Smith on it. One hit means we're prophetic, so we're already prophets, guys. I predicted that there would be a love apostates but rise above them talk. That was Corbett. No, it was.
No,
Corbett.
He wasn't saying love them or rise above them. He was saying it is beneath you to act that way. Don't do it.
Yeah. So he's saying love them.
No. There was no love there.
If you rise
There's
above
no
them.
love. There's no love there.
No. He was talking about parents and their children.
No. Yeah, and saying don't side with your children.
Don't love them.
Don't sink to their level. That will ultimately jeopardize their spiritual journey.
Man. Okay. Well,
not giving you that.
Nemo, there was no new hymn book.
There was no
We
new
didn't get a
hymn book.
location for Russia's temple.
We didn't. Which,
Do you
to be fair, that was not going to happen. Imagine that they barely talk about the war as it is, and now they're like, "Oh, just FYI, we've decided we're going to announce a temple in Russia."
That would have been epic, though, right?
It would have been amusing, but no.
It would have been so tone deaf to everything that's going on in the world.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Which is not beyond the realms of possibility for them to be that tone deaf.
Do we think we got a teary farewell from Rusty? I don't think we did this time.
No.
I think he was like.
I think last time he'd had a bit of a dicky stomach. He thought, "Oh, this might be it." Because when you're that age, a bit of a dicky stomach might make you think, "Oh, right, this is the end." But this time he's feeling a bit more fit as a fiddle, so I think he's fine.
Yeah. Another one of yours, the mention of Russell being the temple prophet. I don't think we got that.
No, we didn't get that.
And then finally, one that you were so far off on, it was unreal. And that was that Holland, a talk from Holland about how they're persecuted and the standard of truth and different things, which I thought was amazing as a prediction. I thought that was guaranteed. He didn't even come.
Didn't even turn up. Do you reckon he faked getting COVID again just to mess with me?
Yeah, he
No,
was
the
like,
rest of us decided you're too smug, Nemo. So we gave him food poisoning.
no, I think
He's
it was
pretending
a
it's
case
COVID.
of
It's not.
I'm going to make all those people down at the University of Southern Utah who are upset with me be like, oh, we should feel bad for him because he's got COVID. Or what's the date for that? Because maybe he's like, if I've got COVID now,
He's going to infect them all.
and I can really sell it by not going to general conference because wild horses couldn't stop him from being there. So then everyone's like, oh, he's not going to be anywhere for 14 days. And if the Southern Utah University thing falls in those 14 days, that's his excuse for not going. So there's no egg on his face that he got voted out. Anyway, Peter, you predicted that the audit report may get relegated to the website and there'll be no live report. Sorry. And
No.
it didn't change, right?
No, it
Did
remained
it count
exactly
that
the same.
the guy delivering it looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him up? And
Well, yeah, he looked like a man that had been told not to mess that up and to read those exact words very, very carefully.
Yeah.
But no, they said exactly the same thing.
3-hour church. I thought we were almost going to get to that, Peter, when they started talking about do more. Who was it in the first session who was like, you need to do more? Was it Gong?
First session.
I think
Was it
he was
Orton?
like, it was.
It was Gong, yeah.
It was Gong.
Because Gong was talking about home teaching.
Yeah, and after he was that after he spoke about the going up to girls on the beach and commenting how they don't look like as whorish as all the others.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, and your third one was disparaging by name a tech or media platform that had paid loads of money into or being paid loads of money by the church. It didn't happen. I did hear a hint of kind of.
There was some anti-social media rhetoric.
They came close. Yeah,
They talked
but no
about
names. I was
influencers
very
and
disappointed.
pundits. But
Yeah.
They did mention the river Amazon, but I didn't think I could really count that.
No.
I got excited for a moment. It's like, oh, they said Amazon because they've spent more than $1 billion on that. But
the river.
no. And it's
The
not really
river.
a social media company. I guess it is.
But Peter is a prophet in one regard.
I had a win. I had a win.
You did, but
Did I
just
have a
before you,
win?
just before you do, because we can't leave her out, even though she's only in the chat. Jane, Jane was talking about humanitarian aid. I don't think we really got to that. Social media control for kids, no. Seminary revamp,
Nope.
no. Anti-activism focus,
Yeah.
from Corbett.
That's a
Talk
win.
about abuse recovery. I don't think. Did I miss? No. Senior missionaries encouraged. And stuff to make preppers go nuts, last day's stuff. So I think Jane got one hit with anti-activist focus. But yes, Peter, you predicted the correct number of sisters who would be involved, which is sad because when you said 4, I thought you were being so
You all laughed at me.
pessimistic.
You
I didn't think the
laughed at
church
me.
could stoop that low. in 2023.
Oh, I did.
Nemo,
Mhm.
who spoke or
We
made
had
it to the
we had
pulpit?
Bonnie Corden. We had Camille Johnson. So those two got to speak. And then we had two prayers, Tracy Browning and Tracy Browning, and then who else did we get? Oh, who prayed? It was a prayer.
It was a prayer. Two
was a
talks,
prayer
two prayers.
on
But
the
no one in the
Sunday.
final session,
No,
which
no one in the
was,
final session.
you'd have thought, because that's like the main session that most people see.
Mm.
And you'd have thought they might have.
There you go. It was the end of the Saturday evening session. We got Sister Kate Annette Dennis.
Okay.
I'm not sure what her position is.
Well, I predicted 7 because I really
Don't
thought
care,
the
I
church
won.
might turn the corner.
Don't
yeah,
care.
well done.
That's fair.
Yeah. And then, well, Temples, I got the Temples Peter with 15. Nemo predicted 12, which I thought was interesting. Peter 19 and Jane 17. Although, when me and Nemo were doing our 5-minute kind of commentary on Russell M. Nelson getting up to the stand, genuinely thought for a second he's not going to announce any, and he's going to sit down and we'll have done this little like live stream for nothing.
Imagine that.
People would have been
He
so
can't,
disappointed.
because it used to not be that every conference they'd announce a temple.
Oh no, there'd be
But
few and
now,
far between.
But now we can't go without a conference
Dozens.
without a dozen temples being announced.
People would be
it's-
so disappointed.
It's madness. You know.
Do you think
Um,
they'll build any of them? Because on that
Well-
map, it really looks like they're not actually
It's pretty
building
bad,
them,
isn't it?
which is insane. Like they have the money to employ 1,000 temple building departments. You know, like there's no practical reason they cannot have those done and dusted
Yeah.
and going up within a year
Mm.
at all. But it just
Well-
shows their tiny-minded vision for the church, that all they can think of to do this is their nepotistically appointed nephews in the department. And it doesn't occur to them just build another temple planning building and expand and hire some more people. Like, they're not even good at doing corporate. I mean,
Yeah.
they can make money, but they're not doing anything with it. They're
Right.
not
Before this
spending it on
rant
their
goes
own
too
stuff.
far, I'm gonna say goodbye to you all. We will wait and see next conference how many of those temples have actually been built by the time the next conference comes around. But one thing's for certain.
I'm intervening.
No, you're not. We're going. We're leaving.
Yes, I am.
It's late at
No.
night. It's late at night, Peter.
We need to flip tables. The Nemo
No.
revolution must happen.
Okay,
He's
we
got
can
the
flip
button.
tables.
The real thing that happened when Jesus did Palm Sunday is he went to the temple and he flipped tables and he purged
Yes.
it. If they
Yeah.
really meant any of this, Nemo would have been paraded in on a donkey. They'd flip all the velvet thrones to tip out the imposters who appointed themselves without a vote of the people. And you or someone like you would be installed as the leaders of the church, and you'd start spending the money on the poor. That's what Palm Sunday means, Mormons. That's what it means.
There we go. Okay, Viva la Revolution. Okay.
Indeed.
And now, on that
Now
note,
you
I'm
can
going to make
skip
myself
slide,
full
children.
screen so that these two gentlemen, and I'm going to mute him as well. He's been put in his corner. I'll let him out in 6 months when the next conference comes around. So, thank you very much, everyone, for joining me for this weekend. I'd say it's been a pleasure, but I'm a bit sleep deprived. Thank you very much. Like this video, subscribe. If you want to see more of the content I'm going to make in the next 6 months between now and then, this isn't the only sort of thing I do. And it'd be great to get your support in whatever way you can. Liking and subscribing is one way. If you can, monthly donations are also appreciated. This is my full-time job. This is what I do, and I love doing it. So until next time, take care, be kind to each other, and remember, if you think someone's lying to you, just check it out. Check out the facts. Even if that person you think is me. Always, always, always fact check. Take care, everyone. Good night. Bye-bye.